kids, you should know how to do CPR. They stick things in their mouths,
Yeah,
right? If you've got kids, that means you have car seats. You should know how car seats work.
yeah.
And those are just basic being a parent and being a part of a family that you should know how to take care of your loved ones. And we've got extra organs and extra hormones. So the men in our lives need to understand that.
Hello and welcome to the Midwifery Wisdom Podcast. I am Shiphrah, student midwife, and your host for today's conversation. I have the pleasure to sit down with the Combat Midwife, Jessica Arnold, who has a wealth of knowledge about not only midwifery, but being able to do your job and offer these services in various settings. So Jessica, I always say, no one can tell your story as good as you yourself. So please tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you came to be known as the Combat Midwife.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. I was really excited to talk with you. So thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, so I have always wanted to deliver babies. It's been my calling since I was a tiny little girl. I know so many people say that, which is great. We know that midwifery truly is a calling. You need to be really called up to do this. But yeah, I was probably 2 or 3 years old, and I remember telling my mom, I'm going to deliver babies when I get big. And I was a homeschool kid, so it was really cool to be able to choose kind of your own curriculum and really focus on things that interest me. And of course, that was medicine. It just never got old. And I loved learning all the really cool things about the human body and how we work. And that sort of ebbed and flowed into my mom having a VBAC with her third pregnancy, and I got to be able to be a part of that. And it was a very traumatic situation. She wound up hemorrhaging and coding because of that. And I watched the whole thing. And I just remember saying, this will never happen again on my watch. So I was very young. I'm a single digits kid, kind of watching all of this going, yeah, I don't think anybody handled this the way they were supposed to. And so I have a very special place in my heart for VBAC moms. Those are probably some of my most favorite births, but we'll speed up a little bit and kind of get towards junior high and high school time. And I started having a very firstborn, first granddaughter, first daughter moment, right? And kind of going, oh my gosh, I don't know if I have to go to medical school to deliver babies. And what if I get through all of that and then I don't even like blood? Because I knew that medical school, like, you don't touch a human being, let alone a patient, until the earliest fourth year. So I was just panicking, going, I don't know if I want to spend all this money and time. So I had uncles that were firemen and medics, and they really encouraged me, if you can become a firefighter and a paramedic, you can do absolutely anything. And I said, say less. So I was still a high school student when I finished up my fire and EMS training. And
Wow.
so thank you. I had a job kind of all lined up for me before I even finished high school, which was phenomenal. And I fell in love with EMS and absolutely enjoyed all of the really cool things I got to do and care for people. And it was really full person medicine, because you're taking care of the mind, the body, the soul, the family members, the scene, then working with people. I just loved it. I fell in love with EMS, but I never lost my passion, not once, about wanting to deliver babies. And I started kind of looking at the medical system through that viewfinder of being in EMS and fire and going, okay, this is super cool for emergencies, but it's not cool for birth. I don't like it for birth. And I was really tapping into like my mom's experience and watching her have other children after that. And I went, I don't really like this. I don't think this is where moms and babies are supposed to be. So I started doing a ton of homework and research on what did we do before all these doctors came around? Like, what was the option? And I went, oh yeah, midwives, because I love history. And, if you think about what we grew up with, right? American Girl dolls and Little House on the Prairie. And we loved all that stuff growing up, right? That was a big part of our childhood because it was on TV and we loved those things. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to start figuring out if those still exist. So just reached out to a bunch of midwives, and I had some cool ones kind of take me under their wing, and they said, hey, do you want to come to a birth? But we'll pause there. So during that whole process, I had at that point a really cool career in EMS, and the military reached out to me when we went to war and said, hey, we really need instructors to teach the combat medic program. Well, I didn't know what the heck that was, but I just have a rule that I never ever say no to an interview, because you have no idea what type of relationship you can cultivate in that environment. Even if you choose not to take the job, you'll learn something about yourself, about someone else, you'll make a connection. And so I went to the interview, I got hired on the spot. I was way in over my head. I didn't know, I was starting on Monday, and I was like, I don't know anything about the Army. Like, I don't know anything about that. But being a homeschool kid, I was like, put me in, coach. I'll just read stuff and figure it out. So I did. And I wound up teaching the combat medic program for multiple years while starting and finishing the midwifery program. And so my students gave me the name, the combat midwife. They bestowed that upon me. And then my coworkers started calling me that. And then even the quote unquote important people, in the military is like, oh, the combat midwife girl, she'll come take care. Anyway, so now it's just become the business. And now I travel around teaching not only military and EMS, but also civilians. So, non-medical people, how to take care of themselves in a disaster situation and care for themselves. Because I've gleaned up a lot of information, not only from the military, but I've worked in refugee camps. I've worked in natural disasters as a midwife. So kind of cool stuff. And believe it or not, EMS and midwifery, we have very similar historical paths. We were birthed out of necessity, right? There was a problem, it needed to be solved, and we're rallied around when things go right with us, and then we kind of get forgotten about when nothing happens. And so there's actually a ton of similarities historically about EMS and midwifery. And so I think it's just the best of both worlds for me to be able to provide really great services to people.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. In your training, as you was training going through midwifery, but also teaching the combat medic program, how much overlap did you find that learning this aspect correlated to what you was doing on the other end?
I don't know that they necessarily overlapped per se, but they definitely complemented each other. So an example being, thinking outside the box, thinking really quick on your feet, doing a really good head to toe assessment, being able to figure out what's going on and what's going to kill your patient right now. Those are EMS skills, right? That's combat medic skills in a nutshell. I mean, obviously there's way more that they do, but we're just whittling it down. Where midwifery has a huge element of watch and wait, of honor the space, of pay attention to the mind, body, soul of a human being, right? And more of it's not that we can't respond to emergencies, we do, and we do them amazingly. It's just that we come at it from kind of a different point of view, and we're also looking at the whole human, right? Where if someone's dealing with a gunshot wound, it's not that I don't care about your mama and them, I do, right? But I have to there's a hole in your chest, and I have to plug that. So we don't have time to talk about, your favorite colors and what candle scent you love. I don't have time for that.
Right.
So I think that they complement each other really well with that midwifery team that kind of took me under their wing and helped me start and finish my education. Was thoroughly impressed that the very first birth they ever took me on, she called me. I had just gotten off shift at the Army base, and she goes, hey, do you want to go to a birth tonight? I was like, sure, okay, that's fine. I'm already in scrubs. I've been, in the lab that's fine. I'll just show up. What do I do? And she goes, just bring yourself. You'll be fine. We have everything. I was like, all right. And we went way out. I'm from Texas, and that's
Texas. Woo-hoo.
oh, yeah, okay, great. So out in the boonies, we were on somebody's private property, and this was a family that was in charge of the farm. So they were the hired hands that lived on the property full time, but English was not their first language. It was Spanish. And I have enough conversational Spanish being in EMS in Texas that I can ask basic things like, are you cold? Are you hot? Do you hurt somewhere? Are you hungry? I can do some conversational stuff. So they were like, oh, wow, that's cool. And the mama wanted a water birth, but there was a horrible storm and it was an ice storm. And if you know Texas, we can get some really bad ice storms. And so the power was going in and out. There was no running water. We were just having a real hard time getting some basic needs taken care of. And I said, well, there's a gas station down the road. I'll just go blow up the birth pool there. And dad has a truck, so I'll just hold it down. And the midwives were looking at me like I was crazy. I was like, I'll just be right back. I'll just be right back. So I went and did that and came back, and and then I was like, it's a gas stove. So I'll just one pot at a time with boiling water. I'll just get it somewhere. Obviously, she didn't wind up having, it took too long to do that, and she was going to have a baby too fast. But their little one woke up, and I was able to strip her down, throw a bunch of Barbies in the pool, toss the little baby in the pool, and she just was, Mommy got me a Mommy got me a pool in the house. Mommy got me a pool in the house. And she thought that was great. So, being kind of resourceful and thinking outside the box, it pays off when you're trying to join a midwifery group and go, please teach me.
Right, right. It definitely helps you stand apart. And even for families, they can benefit. Everyone's not an EMS, right? We don't have that on the job training of how to adjust in the situation. But there are situations where even just the average family needs to be prepared for emergencies or even births. So, what are some ways that you say that families can prepare for the unexpected?
Right. I think really sitting down with whoever your birth team is, right? Because that's going to look different for everybody. Maybe it's a husband and a wife. Maybe it's a husband, wife, and a doula and a midwife. I don't know what it'll be, but everybody's birth team is a little bit different. And really talking about what resources you have. Like in that situation, we were really far from town there. So travel, length of time was an element that needed to be taken into consideration, right? Like most people live in neighborhoods and it's 5 or 10, 15 minutes to the hospital. This was going to be quite a drive. So I think identifying what your risk factors are is super important. And that looks differently for everybody. I also believe in what is your definition of risk, right? What is too risky for you, maybe not risky for me, because I have a different mindset, a different background. I have different personal experiences than you do. And so identifying what those risks are for you and finding out where your boundary is super important. Having those really big conversations are super important before we even get to labor, right? So we all know what the boundaries are.
Even myself as a student midwife, I remember kind of having this aha moment of like, I feel very comfortable supporting a birth. I feel very comfortable reacting to an emergency. But there are some emergencies that are relatively common or, more likely to happen. And as of now, the main way that we address them is with medicinal feedback. So what do you say for those who are listening who may not have access to that, even midwives, right? They can be in a different region or different country, even knowledge of combat medic or another approach can be helpful for those people.
So are you asking class-wise? Can you clarify the question? I'm sorry.
How do you address major emergencies without access to main medications, like your hemorrhages and things of that nature?
So for hemorrhaging, I love using herbs. They're my favorite. I very rarely, of course I carry Pitocin because that's just, we're happy it's 2025. But, Pitocin has a black box warning. It's not as great as my herbal stuff. I throw Pitocin away way more than I ever use it because it expires, right? So I have to chuck it. I just love using herbs for postpartum hemorrhage. It's nicer, it works faster. I've not had any patient that hasn't responded to it. And that's just my experience. I'm sure you could ask 3 other midwives and they're going to have 3 other different
Right.
advice or experiences, and that's okay. And I think listening to those is also very important. Like having a variety of people you talk to and glean information from, I think is very important when you're talking about any type of medical care, but definitely birth.
That makes sense. Speaking of, you like to carry your herbs. What does your birth bag look like in general?
So that's so funny. Thank you for asking that, because I wish you could see everything, but it's all over the place right now because I'm going through my bag because next week I leave to go jump on a plane to go hang out with someone and wait for a baby to arrive Earthside. And I was going through my bag. It's kind of stripped down. I don't have a ton of stuff. I don't like a lot of fluff, especially if I'm like in the States and there's not I'm not dealing with a disaster. That's different. I pack differently for that because I'm taking care of people with way bigger issues than I can just pop to Walmart real fast, right? But I carry my Doppler and my fetoscope and my measuring tape, and I have a chunk full of herbs and homeopathics. I love arnica and I love nux vomica for nausea, and angelica and shepherd's purse, and afterbirth crampy stuff that, when the ones are just, they're nasty and you're trying to breastfeed a baby, right? You're like, I'm gonna vomit because they're just so strong. That happens, right? So I really rely heavily on my herbs. I love them.
hmm And it's great that you have that experience to have that trust in them to know that they, in most cases, work for your clients.
I mean, they really do. There was one time I had back, sometimes, this, like sometimes you have baby showers where they all decide to come at one time,
Yeah,
right? Just
yeah.
They just all sprinkle on you at one time. And I had one of those. And so I was digging through my bag trying to find that like 1 or 2 last vials of Pitocin for a mama that I had delivered all her babies. And she's just one of those, like, she just likes to bleed a lot after. And I wouldn't call it a hemorrhage, but she just likes to be, bleedy after birth. And so for their family to feel better, they just wanted to preemptively treat. That's just what they felt was best for them. So I was like, we can try some herbs, or, and I'm digging through my bag and I had a partner with me and she's like, can I try something? And I went, yeah, sure. I don't care. Whatever. She goes, well, I read that if you put a cotyledon of the placenta in like buccally, so that would be between the cheek and the gum, it'll stop the bleeding. And I went, I'm down, let's try. But I mean, ask the patient, ask the mama, what does she want to do? And so
Mhm.
we asked and she goes, yeah, I'll try it. That sounds cool. Let's just try it. So, and we did, and it just, I mean, it worked. And so I like knowing those things because let's just pretend that my herbs weren't working. Let's
Mhm.
pretend that something was, that mama's just going to respond differently. Now I have a whole new tool in my toolbox that I just didn't know about before that birth.
Right.
Right? And that's cool. So I think that's neat to just talk to other people and glean all that information and, file it in our little brain Rolodex.
I like the way that you put that, and it truly kind of speaks to the idea that OB skills really just a matter of survival skills, and
Yeah.
that any average person really can benefit from knowing a thing of two. You never know, the baby comes before the midwife arrives, or whatever the case is. So, how can like dads and just individual families benefit from this information?
Well, they men in general, I believe, truly need to know this information simply because we want them to not only be financial providers for their family, but also mental, emotional, spiritual, and medical providers. Categorizing female care needing to only be performed by females is lovely in a perfect world, because I do believe that women should be surrounded by other women during particular events in their childbearing years. I absolutely believe that. I mean, I'm a midwife, right? So that makes sense that I would think that way. But I also know that men need to be able to take care of their daughters or their wives or their girlfriends or their partners when that isn't available. Maybe they live in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and it takes an hour to get to town and it's snowing. What are you going to do? Think about all the families that were separated from resources with hurricanes, flooding, and we've had a lot of that lately. Think about the midwife that was floating around on a a pool boat thingy that in during Hurricane Katrina because she knew her neighbors in her community had pregnant ladies in it and she wanted to go check on them. So we can think that natural disasters and civil unrest and upheaval is stuff that happens in the past, but we're the future's past, right? And so we might be experiencing those things in our present time, and we just need to be ready for that stuff. It's not any different than someone learning how to do CPR, minor first aid. If you've got kids, you should know how to do CPR. They stick things in their mouths,
Yeah.
right? If you've got kids, that means you have car seats. You should know how car seats work.
Yeah.
Those are just basic being a parent and being a part of a family that you should know how to take care of your loved ones. And we've got extra organs and extra hormones. So the men in our lives need to understand that. And that's one of the multiple reasons I created and started teaching the Combat Midwife workshop is because both men and women were asking, hey, I would love to know what you're teaching all those military guys. Like, what are you teaching them? Well, I can't invite you on base, right? Like, there's laws for that. So, what I can do is bring the workshop to you and teach that to you. And both men and women walk away going, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know how my menstrual cycle worked. I didn't know that a cord around the neck was pretty normal. That's the normal presentation of a baby. It's just a variation in normal. Or I didn't know that breach is a variation in normal. That's not an emergency. Like, that's not a definition of an emergency for me. It totally can be for someone else because they dictate what is risky for them, right? So they can use that terminology, but to me, it's not. It's just a variation in normal. If you can back up a trailer, you can deliver a breech baby. So, it's just it's removing the fear from these things and really just talking about how this is just a normal part of life. I've had people in the workshop going, I know how to deliver a cow or a goat. It's probably the same thing. And I'm like, physiologically, yes, but not really, right? Like those animals need a ton of help because their mortality is super duper high. We don't, right? Humans need less intervention. They don't need more intervention. So, kind of breaking away all that horrible propaganda that happened in the late 1800s, early 1900s was saying all the horrible, the smear campaign for granny midwives and indigenous women and immigrants, like just saying how awful and horrible midwives were. And we're reaping the seeds, the crops of that horrible campaign. And so kind of just stripping that away, it changes people's lives. It really does. Women love to hear, oh, I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm supposed to feel this way. I'm supposed to look this way. I'm supposed to, that pooch around that's your uterus, ma'am.
Yeah, a very important organ.
Right? Like you're supposed to look a particular way. We're not supposed to look like the magazines. And oh, you mean I'm supposed to feel all the emotions with my cycle? Yes, ma'am. That's how you survived. That's how our foremothers survived. We needed to take all the information from that cycle and go protect ourselves, stay away from people. Like that's how we're here.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, a lot of people can benefit from this information. You mentioned your workshops. Is that the only way to access this information currently, by scheduling you for a live workshop in their local cities?
So I have these workshops all over the country. So I travel and come to them. If they want a private class, absolutely, just contact me and we can figure out how to do that. I don't believe that until probably 26 or 27 we'll do online events, but you understand this, like learning about birth is really hands-on. Like I bring mannequins, we have tons of fun. It's pretty cool. So being able to work through, oh, this is how you normally place your hands to catch a baby. This is how you normally take care of a nuchal cord. And that's cool to learn it in an online workshop, but it's doesn't beat putting your hands on a mannequin and actually doing it.
Need the muscle memory of it, It's one thing to have the words and the information, but for your body to know how to just snap into response, that EMT or medic response that you have is a world of difference.
Yes, ma'am. It totally changes everything.
Do you have anything coming up here soon that you wanted to share with the audience?
Yeah, so we have a workshop that's coming up. The next one that's on the calendar is the 13th. It's actually in San Antonio, Texas. And so we'll be doing a big workshop then. And then I also created the Combat Midwife OB kit. And so that's for an emergency situation. So I whittled it down to the bare minimum of what you would need, or what I think you would need to deliver a baby in an emergency situation. So this is like really cool to toss in your car or take with you on a deployment, or maybe you really want to go do some medical missions overseas. This would be a cool thing to put in your foot locker and take with you, because it's just the bare minimum of what you would need in a grid down, what hits the fan situation of all the stuff you need to catch a baby and do it in a safe and loving way.
And that kit can be found at ask@combatmidwife.com.
That's my email, yeah, but just Combat Midwife is my website, and you can totally find everything there. I have a ton of free resources on my page too. I've written articles, books, and there's an open source book that I have too. So you can read a bunch of stuff for free on my website. It's all under kind of the publication section. And I've been on a ton of podcasts, so you can also just listen to other things and glean a bunch of information that way too.
Well, thank you so much for putting this out in the world. So many people can benefit not only from the information, from the kit as you manage, and just kind of changing what people think and know about birth and the safety, and having the information to support their loved one through these different situations. Because things hit the fan and we must be prepared.
We must be prepared, absolutely. And I want to make it accessible for everybody. So for your listeners, I bestowed upon you a code so you guys can use the word wisdom and get a discount on the website.
Beautiful. You can find some wonderful resources at thecombatmidwife.com using the code wisdom to be able to have a discount on some of the products there. And even Midwifery Wisdom has wonderful educational sources as well. If you're in your season of learning, growing, you have many of options to grow your experience. The CEUs on the Midwifery Wisdom website currently also have 15% off for the listeners at MWCPOD15 to get your 15% off. Thank you again to our listeners for joining this conversation today. Thank you, Jessica, the Combat Midwife, for your wisdom that you shared with our listeners.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blessing. Thank you.